Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the theoretical concepts paper in order for you to have enough time to think about it and do your research. This paper will be due at the end of week 6 on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So here you have the assignment instructions. For this paper, you will be conducting a literature review. You will be looking at the client that you did for the developmental assessment paper, but for the purpose of this paper, you will need to look at the client's primary concern. This could be a specific diagnosis, a specific type of trauma, a symptom of a diagnosis such as self-harm, or even issues related to oppression or discrimination. If you have any questions about identifying what to focus your literature review on related to your client, please reach out to me because I've read all of your developmental assessment papers and I could potentially be able to help you out there. So from there, you'll be doing your own research on this particular issue. You will likely be utilizing the Widener Library Services to view scholarly articles. The requirement is that you find at least 5 or more scholarly articles related to your client's issue. You'll then summarize them into your paper. From the articles, you'll be looking at gaining a better understanding of the issue as well as looking at interventions that have been researched to be effective for this client's issue and discussing how it could inform your work with the client. Some of the interventions may be similar to what you wrote about in your developmental assessment paper, and some of them might be different, and that's okay. It's just looking at, what those articles have indicated as being effective for that issue. It is important to be really thorough with this review. You'll see that the requirement is 4 to 5 pages for this portion of the paper. It might be helpful to start with a description of the issue first through the research and then move on to a review of the interventions described within the research. You can divide the literature review into those 2 sections for organization if you like. It might just flow a little bit more. It might just make a little bit more sense that way. So then the second portion of the paper will be a discussion of how you would specifically modify your interactions and interventions with your client based on what you learned from the research. Here you might discuss how you might expect the client to respond to these types of interventions that you learned through the research, whether it be positively or negatively. You might describe the interventions you already used with the client and described in the developmental assessment paper, and identify things you would do the same and things that you might do differently now that you have, thoroughly reviewed the research on the issue. It might be helpful here to first describe the interventions you already used and then go into how you might change them and how the client might respond to those changes. So I mentioned previously that the literature review, sorry, I'm having a lot of trouble saying that right now. It will need to include 5 scholarly articles. These articles must be from your own research, and I want to be clear about that. They cannot be articles that are already used in the course. However, there is a requirement of 10 sources total, and you'll see that here. The remaining sources can be from the books or literature that was already assigned to this class. But they all do need to be scholarly sources. You will use the additional resources potentially in your description of the issue and your description of interventions that you've already used. They might be helpful to just supplement them into your paper. You could use the same sources you used in the developmental assessment paper if you would like, that's fine. And it's also appropriate if you would like to use more than 5 outside sources for the review of the literature, and just use less from what we've already used within the class. The requirement is just that you have 10 total and at least 5 outside sources. So as you can see on the rubric, the main focus of the paper is the review of research. As you enter the field of clinical social work, it's crucial that you have a good understanding of how to read and understand scholarly articles and research studies. If you hit a point in your practice and feel stumped by a particular issue with a client, it's important to do your research in the way that you are within this paper. along with accessing consultation and supervision. So understanding research will be a very practical skill that you will definitely continue to use in your practice ongoing. So that's essentially, what we have for this paper. It's a little bit shorter than the developmental assessment paper, but definitely includes a lot more citations. So focus on APA guidelines again. And if you have any questions about APA as well, you can feel free to reach out to me. Any questions at all, I'm here to help. So please do reach out. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a good week.